Homang, Charlie Smith, Jong Benji, Georgia Strait. I'm Charlie Smith, editor of the Georgia Strait, a weekly newspaper in Vancouver, and I'm very happy to have with me today John Horgan, the new leader of the NDP in British Columbia, or as we would say in Cantonese, Losai. And John Horgan is with us to discuss the economy, but first I want to ask you, how are you adjusting to the new position?
Well, I'm enjoying the job a great deal. I've only been the leader of the official opposition for a little over a month now, but I'm getting out to see various parts of the province, talking to people I've not met before, making new friends, and spreading the word about the need to have balance in our economy, balance in our government. So those are the issues that I think are catch-alls for the challenges that people face in their home lives, and I want to bring that to politics as well.
One of the things when I became editor of the Georgia Strait, I set some broad, big objectives that I hope to accomplish. Have you gotten to the stage where you've looked at what your bigger objectives are over a longer time horizon?
I have. Well, certainly I start with the organization at the legislature, the staff and the people and the MLAs that I work with. There are 33 other members of the legislature on the NDP in the NDP caucus, and I'm working with them to determine what their objectives are and how we can mesh the 33 or 34 of us, counting me, into a cohesive team to spread out around the province and to talk about the issues that are important to people. And as we do that, Charlie, my plan is, over the next 3 years between now and the next election, is to develop a platform that isn't the NDP telling the public what's good for it, but rather talking to the public, getting a sense of what the issues are in communities, whether they be urban issues or rural issues, and then bringing those to some coherent policies to bring to the public at the next election. I think that's what the public expects of me. I don't have the answers to all the problems. Let's identify the problems first and develop the solutions working in tandem with people rather than being prescriptive about how we're going to solve the problems.
One of the greatest concerns that I'm observing in this region is the economy. And there's tremendous anxiety when you look at things like the declining gas sales to the United States, the unemployment rate, the jobs situation isn't what a lot of people would like. What are your thoughts about what we have to do to get the BC economy in a better position?
Well, government has a limited role to play in developing economic activity, but it has an enormous role to play in ensuring that that economic activity flows smoothly, and that starts with infrastructure development. I believe, unlike the government, that we need to invest aggressively in public transit. That helps us move people and goods, and it also creates employment. Public sector creation of wealth is not something that just happens instinctively. You have to go out and make sure that you're investing in the elements of the infrastructure we need. The bridge work that's being done in Vancouver right now, for example, over time will stimulate more economic activity than had we left it to continue to deteriorate. And that can be said in rural communities as well. The infrastructure deficit is something that we don't talk about enough in our public discourse. We continue to hear the government say, oh, we don't have any money for this, we don't have any money for that. We need to set priorities about what we want to see 5, 10, 15 years from now. If they can do that when they're talking about liquefied natural gas, why not then have a 5, 10, 15-year strategy for infrastructure development, a 5, 10, 15-year strategy for the cultural sector, the creative sector, tourism, on it goes. The diversity of our economy is apparent for anyone to see, but government should be singularly focused on everything, not singularly focused on LNG.
One of the things with transportation, the Premier made a controversial announcement at the UBCM convention to replace the Massey Tunnel with a bridge without discussing this in the context of the demands of Surrey for transit and the City of Vancouver for a subway out to UBC. Some people say there's a finite amount of money there. You've got Surrey, you've got Vancouver, and you've got a bridge. Do you think all three should be proceeded with, or should there be a process whereby one goes first, a second, and then a third?
I think that you want to, whenever you're doing large, what would be characterized as mega projects, significant public investments in infrastructure development, you want to stage that over time so that for the employment benefits, you're spreading that along. We also have a skills shortage right now. So do we want to be creating more demand for skilled workers that we can't meet before we get training programs in place, or do we want to stage that? So we're creating jobs for British Columbians first, and then others, Canadians and others down the road. We also have to look at our immigration policies, which is a federal responsibility. But as we look holistically at how we're going to develop British Columbia, it seems to me having a say in immigration policy is a key component of that. We don't even have a say in temporary foreign worker policy, which has been very controversial, as you know, over the past number of years. It's our view that we need to build our economy through immigration, not through temporary immigration, where the rights of citizenship are denied, where employment standards might be abrogated. We need to make sure that if someone comes to this country to make their life better, as my father did, an Irish immigrant, and yours, Charlie, at some point came from somewhere else, we need to ensure that the rights of citizenship are there for anyone who sets foot on this beautiful territory, and we're not seeing that right now. So I would like to see more involvement from the provincial government in how we're shaping our immigration policies as well.
One of the things that some research out of SFU concluded was the biggest portion of GDP was actually finance, insurance, and real estate services. It was $44 billion of GDP, and that doesn't even include construction. This is purely services. Services are 76% of the BC economy. What can the NDP do to send a message to voters that this is a priority for your party?
Well, if you talk specifically about services, people don't understand what you're saying. But when you start breaking down those component parts and the services that citizens access every day, private sector projects are delivered by accessing services provided through consulting, right down to project management, to dry cleaning. You know, on and on it goes. Every element of our economy in the Lower Mainland is dependent on services. And that takes us back to public infrastructure, because you need to be able to move your goods, your services, and your intellectual capital from place to place to place. In a congested community, it reduces productivity, it reduces the ability to meet client demands, and also to realize the quality of life issues that are also part and parcel of the splendor of living in British Columbia. So meshing those, government's responsibility is to clear the decks, invest in public infrastructure, allow people to move around, allow the economy to grow, and be cognizant that there are multiple sectors that we need to focus on. And that talks about tax policy, that talks about ensuring that you're able to attract new employees because of the services that we can provide here, health, education, and so on. And I think that the singular focus, as I say, I think liquefied natural gas, and we'll talk about that later on, is an opportunity for British Columbia that we need to pursue, but not at the expense of everything else.
One of the things with LNG is the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives has raised the issue that gas prices may not remain high if Japan fires up its nuclear reactors, because Japan is 1/3 of the exports of the LNG. So if the LNG prices drop, you know, $10, $9 from the $16, $17, and this deal with Putin and China indicates that that could be a possibility. Yeah. How concerned are you about this, and what type of planning should the government be doing in the event that natural gas prices don't hold in Asia?
Well, I think British Columbians with an understanding of history will remember Northeast Coal and the amount of investment that the government, on behalf of the people of BC, put into creating infrastructure to get coal from the Northeast to the coast at a certain price, and then after a number of years, that price started to drop. That's, I think, a cautionary tale for liquefied natural gas. And
what lessons can we draw now as we're embarking on massive infrastructure investments, or the potential of that?
And that's exactly where I was going, Charlie. The challenge for the opposition, although I support trying to get our commodity, natural gas, to higher price markets so that there's a broader benefit to the people of British Columbia. It's our resource, after all. That in principle, I absolutely support. But there are so many steps along the way that need to be confirmed before we proceed. What are the greenhouse gas consequences of expanding the industry? Will that blow our legislated targets out of the water? Quite possibly. I asked the Premier, I had 3 hours with her last week during budget estimates as the legislature wrapped up. I asked her repeatedly, what are the consequences? Have you done this work? No answer. You talk about a prosperity fund. Well, what's the tax regime? What's the structure that's going to create this unlimited resource that you talk about? No answer. So we have lots of hype and not a lot of substance. And my concern, and the concern of British Columbians should be, in this singular focus on one sector, ignoring tourism, ignoring film, ignoring all of the other sectors, agriculture, the only thing they've done with respect to agriculture is denigrate it through changes to the Agricultural Land Commission. So if we're going to proceed with this, what are the consequences of international activities? You mentioned the deal between Russia and China, $400 billion deal that's laying pipe. It's not laying pipe, compressing, liquefying, and then transporting across an ocean. It's just laying a pipe. So that's going to reduce the price in Asia. You talked about Japan firing up its nukes. That's going to reduce the demand in Asia, which will have an impact on price. All of these variables are in play, and a prudent government would be conscious of that and advising the public that there are challenges. But we're going to proceed. We're going to go cautiously and hopefully realize agreements with customers for our products that will give a great return to the province. But I haven't seen that yet.
And what's your bet? You pay close attention to energy. Are we going to see a final investment decision before the next provincial election?
Before
on an LNG plant?
If it's going to happen, it'll happen certainly within the next 18 months. I believe one, maybe two. The one that I would keep an eye on, particularly here in the South Coast, is the small, what they call a boutique project in Squamish, or actually on the old Howe Sound pulp site. That's a small plant, and the people in the Lower Mainland haven't really been talking about transiting natural gas. They've been focusing on oil and bitumen, as they should. So that's another debate that I think will emerge, and there's lots to talk about. And I think we've got such an engaged public in British Columbia. These public policy issues attract attention. You do a great job bringing those to the public mind. And my job as an elected representative is to feel the pulse and respond by putting in place policies as a government, or certainly a platform as an opposition, that will meet the needs of the public first and foremost, and then we'll proceed from there.